don't know, Michael. It's really hard to describe, apart from it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, no, I can tell.
And in a way, what I've been talking to my clients about recently is like it's just that no adjective is true. So there are no brilliant holidays, there are no scary pandemics, there are no beautiful flowers, there are no hideous weather, brilliant weather, there's no anxious people. It's just another adjective. So in the same way that you could say this pen is gorgeous or it's ugly, like neither of them are true. It's just a pen.
Yeah.
And then my experience of it.
Well, there you go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the first episode of Might Help, Can't Hurt, Conversations with Leaders, Doers, and Friends in 2021. And my very first leader-doer friend is Nicola Bird, who, when did we met after a conference in 2012, 2011?
A long time ago, a long time ago. I can't even remember the year. Yeah, it was about then. Yeah.
I remember a conversation we had where you essentially said to me, I was really interested in what you were saying, but I think it would ruin my life and business. So no.
and you said back to me something like, well, if it looks like that's the case, then I totally understand your answer, or something.
Something like that.
Well, we agreed to part ways and then came back a few years later.
A few years later, and in fact, ruined your life and business. So it was, very impressive. But for those of you who don't know Nick, she is not just the founder of A Little Peace of Mind and the author of the fabulous Hay House book, A Little Peace of Mind, the revolutionary solution for freedom from anxiety, panic attacks, and stress, with a foreword by Michael Neal. But your other sort of special skill that I have always admired about you is ideas get out of your head and into the world really quick. Like when we used to work together, you would sometimes email me about something you were thinking of doing, a business. And by the time I would respond to the email, you'd already registered the company, set up the website, and started trading. And and it was, they didn't always last for that long. But so the two things I'd love to spend some time with today are, I thought we'd start with A Little Peace of Mind because anxiety seems to be relevant to a few people at the moment.
Yeah.
And then kind of move towards that sort of creative expression that, what I talk about in Creating the Impossible is getting your dreams out of your head and into the world.
That's
a cool.
Yes. Very cool.
So when over Thanksgiving, we did a giveaway of some of our Whole New Way of Thinking of videos, and there's like 25 in the series, and we let people choose one. And the overwhelming one this year was A Whole New Way of Thinking about anxiety.
Was it?
Yeah. And so as somebody who has now not just obviously had your own personal overcoming anxiety, which would be if you could share a version of it, but also worked with a lot of people on this. I guess here's the thing. So let's start with what's probably the biggest thing you've seen that makes a difference. And then I'd love if you share your story.
The biggest thing that makes a difference for me, or
the biggest thing that you've seen make a difference to people, because you work, you coach, you train coaches, and you sort of.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a really good question. I think it's when people start to catch on to the idea that they're not scared of what they think they are. That they're scared of, it just seems so obvious, but they're scared of being afraid. They have the fear of the fear.
Yeah.
And they kind of don't realize that that's what they're scared of. They're scared of having another panic attack. They're scared of being anxious. They're scared of sitting in an uncomfortable feeling. They're scared of being nervous. And so they avoid situations in their lives, and their lives get smaller and smaller and smaller. Actually, do you know what is the most helpful thing? Now you said it.
Yeah.
the most helpful thing, the thing that I hear time and time again, is where people come to me and they say, you understand, you get me. You've lived my life. You're in my head. You're telling my story.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And then they hear my story and they kind of see the before and the after.
Yeah.
And then they get hopeful about what's possible. That's what makes the biggest difference. It's like, gosh, well, you were pretty much as loopy as it gets in terms of anxiety and stress and panic attacks and, you know, not leaving your house and all that kind of thing. And now you have this like normal life, like this wonderful life.
Yeah.
How does that happen? And then, as you know, right, the minute the light of hope goes on, there's an openness and there is the receptiveness to hearing.
Yeah.
And then people start to hear things that are new and different, and they might listen to the insights and the journey that I had, but what's helpful is when that light comes on and they start hearing their own things and they get their own realizations. And so there's no one common insight that everybody has, but there's something about that, seeing that it's possible for change because, oh, you've done it.
Yeah.
That is really what makes a difference, I think.
Yeah. And there's something kind of, and it might be because I was in on part of the journey, but there's something phenomenal when you can go, oh, no, it's real.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, I'm okay now. You know, it's like, oh no, it's actually okay. It's actually fine. Great.
Yeah. Like I say to people, like when you look out the window, you see all those normal people that are just walking by in the street. I'm like one of them now. And that's all people want when they're struggling. Honestly, you laugh, but like when you've got anxiety and stress and everything is worth worrying about, like you don't want to be a superhero. You don't want to like create amazing things in the world. You don't want to have this amazing. You just want to be like that those normal people who are standing at the school gate, or the normal people they're just in the supermarket, just doing their shopping. They don't realize how lucky they are. And look at those people just driving on the road. They're not even thinking about it. You just want to be normal. Yeah. And that's it. Like you don't want nothing more than that even looks possible. Yeah. You're not interested. I just
what was your journey? I mean, how?
Well, so my journey in a nutshell was kind of 20 years of, on the one hand, and this links into the creativity actually, but on the one hand, the kind of driven, ambitious, high achieving, got to be top of the class, always getting the A grades, working really hard, create, be amazing at everything I possibly could be, get all the promotions, create all the business, create all the income, create all the revenue, be the best I could, all that kind of stuff. Having a fabulous life. And then on the other hand, behind the scenes was an absolute mess, was panic attacks, anxiety, agoraphobia, couldn't leave my house, migraines, so many sleepless nights, just not able, like had big chunks of time where I couldn't even function at all. I'd have to literally take to my bed, and I'd have to get people to kind of like I'd have to hire people to pick my kids up from school, or I just couldn't even put the bins out. You know, it was that bad. I couldn't step outside my house, and I had not linked the two. Don't ask me why. I had not linked it at all. I was like, you know, no, this is health. This go-getting. This is health. This is what healthy, thriving people do. And this is what like absolute losers do. And I'm really embarrassed and ashamed of it. So I won't tell anyone about it, and I'll hide it all because this is my public persona. And nobody would know. My mum didn't know. My friends didn't know. My husband knew.
Mum didn't know.
Nobody knew. When I wrote the book, my mum said, I wish you'd told me. When she read it, I wish you'd told me like what was going on. I was like, I couldn't. That's all part of it. Yeah. If you just hide it behind, because God forbid that any of my clients or my work people or my bosses would find out what a mess I actually really was. Yeah. So I kind of kept all that hidden. And then for me, the real climax was in 2013, where first of all, I had really, really bad flu, and that totally knocked me out. And then I had migraines for 10 days straight. And then I couldn't leave the house for 3 months after that, because I was so scared of having another migraine, so scared of going out of the house, couldn't go anywhere. And that's at the beginning of 2013. I was like, there has to be something simpler than this. This is just like, I can't keep going like this. I didn't know what. And then I kind of carried on, and I upped my team, and I tried to step back and tried to create things more simply in the world of form. and just still kept feeling dissatisfied. And then that was the summer where my business hit 7 figures for its annual revenue. And it's all I'd been working for like, it took me 3 years, I think, with that business to get to that number, but that's all I'd been working for. And suddenly it was, oh, and it was so shocking that the silence of like, oh, look, it was on my phone. I was on the beach in Spain. I was like, oh, look, 7. Oh, and then we just got on with sunbathing again. And that was it. And I was like, what? All that effort for what? And then I didn't know what to do with myself. Yeah. And so that was the point at which I then thought, okay, I'm in the wrong job. I want to do a different job. I need to retrain. I couldn't find out what job to do because what shall I do is my signature insecurity. So what shall I do? What shall I do? What shall I do? Bumped into Jamie Smart's book, and the title was Clarity. And I thought, that's what I need. Yeah. So I read the book, didn't understand what it was on about, but somehow remembered and made the link back to you. Oh, hang on a minute. He trained with Michael. So I went to look you up, and then I thought, oh, Michael's doing coach training. That will be my new job. I'll sign up to that. He'll give me all the templates, all the boxes, all the sheets, all the questions to ask clients, and I'll go back to being a coach, which I had dropped because I just thought I'm not a very good coach. So I had dropped that years ago. And I thought, no, I originally trained as, I'm going to go back and retrain as a coach. And Michael's got this thing called Super Coach Academy. That sounds right up my street. And not only am I going to do that, I'm just going to sign up for an apprentice because I want to be top of the class. Right? God knows why you let me in. And I came to you and we explored, what shall I do for a career? Like, what can I do for a job? How can I find this happiness that I'm looking for? And without us even really talking about it, it wasn't even on the wish list when you said, what do you really want? After about 10 weeks, I looked around and it had gone. All that anxiety had gone. Yeah. And because I always think of it as magic. So on one hand, we've been exploring the 3 principles conversation. And on the other hand, my life, without us talking about it, had been changing, without me kind of really noticing. And so it's like magic. Like somehow whatever we were doing over here made a difference over here. And I didn't understand how. And that's when I started to really listen.
And how do you make sense of it now, of that transition, with the benefit of hindsight?
That's just the way it works. It is like magic. It's like, well, I explain a little bit, but I have a little more insight into it now, but it's because what is experienced in the world of form is only ever a reflection of our understanding. And as our understanding changes, our world changes. And whenever it looks like the world needs to change, we can't change it over here. I couldn't be less anxious. I couldn't create differently. I couldn't change I try so hard to relax. I just couldn't do it. Yeah, exactly. I was talking to a client today. I was saying I'd sit in a chair like this for I'm going to sit here for half an hour. It'd be like nails going down a blackboard. My mind would be literally screaming inside my head at having to sit still. And so trying to change the world of form was impossible, even though I'd spent 20 years trying. You think I'd have figured it out, but I didn't.
As it happened, you were not bad at changing the world.
Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah, so I was very misled by the world of form because it looked like I was changing it. But that's what I saw, Michael. It's just that as our understanding grows in terms of who we are and how we create our experiences, as we get touched by the deeper feelings as the spiritual nature of life, the world that appears in front of our eyes changes. So where motorways look scary, they just stop looking scary. And where going on trips with my kids looks scary, it just stopped looking scary. Because there was a change happening on the inside. So the world that appeared in front of my eyes looked different. And that's always the way it works, in my mind. So we don't really need to worry about this bit. That's where the leverage is, if you like.
You said that, when your understanding changes, your life changes. What did you understand? What did you come to understand? Like, what for you was the understanding that changed?
I understood. I had a series of insights that really changed things for me. So on that first weekend that I came and spent time with you, it wasn't actually even a conversation with you, it was with one of your other apprentices, Libby. And I remember us having a conversation, and I suddenly realized, like, oh, if I have a migraine, I could take care of it then. So I had migraines maybe once or twice a year, but I lived in the fear of them 24/7. I literally, every thought was like, what if I get a migraine now? I need to sit at the front. What if I get a migraine? And like, what if I need to leave? Have I got some water? Have I got some tablets? What if I get one now? Who will I ask now? Who's on my speed dial? How will I get home? Literally, that was all in my head the whole time. So I lived in the experience of migraine 24/7, but I only had them a couple of times a year. And that, to me, seems so obvious now.
Yeah.
But when it happens, I can take care of it then. And Libby turned around to me and she said, no, it's even better, Nick. When it happens, you'll be taken care of. As in, you don't even need to come up with what you're going to do in those moments. Something will come to you in those moments. None of your, that's what I heard. No, it still gives me goosebumps. None of your concern. And as I understand that, I didn't really understand how to explain that, but I felt the truth in it. And so now I see that what I came to understand was that there's something other than me, that there's something that brings ideas to mind. I didn't know that before. I thought I was the thought generator. I thought that's me, that is. And it's to see that no, ideas come to us. I'd never considered that fact before. Yeah. That thought comes to us. It comes in and out of us. It's not a result of the mechanics of what's me whirring around in here that needs to sort and fix and manage everything. It was like the weight of the world. Well, all of that thinking fell away in one insight. Yeah. I didn't have to worry about it. I thought, well, next time I have a migraine, I'll worry about it then. And so and because I saw that, I just didn't have to think about it ever again. And that was the content of my head all of the time, was that worry, and it just vanished in one insight. Yeah. I saw that, and then I also saw that, thanks to the lovely George Pransky, I saw that where I had thought that going faster and doing better and being more and being busy and being my brilliant mind and my speedy implementation, that I thought was a sign of health and thriving, was the sign of mental illness. And that on a continuum where there's a quiet, tense mind at one end and a busy, frantic mind at the other, I've been doing everything I could in my life to get faster, because to me that was more health. I don't want anything to do with those like quiet, boring people. Yeah. I was very judgy. There's quite like, I want people to help me go faster. Why are you guys all lagging behind? Come on, go faster. And I'd hire coaches to help me go faster and read books to make me go faster and everything. Stand up because I could work faster, drink more coffee because I could work faster. And what George helped me see was that you've just got the poles switched. And that led to my turning and looking in the direction of what did it mean to have a quieter mind. And that was a shit show for a couple of years. You remember?
I remember. I do remember. But I also am remembering, for me, when I first came across this, and was one of my coaches said to me, you know, you might want to slow down up there. And I kind of laughed and said, oh, I'm so much slower than I was before I had this conversation. Right. And she said, how fast were you going before?
Yeah.
But what I realized when she pushed me on it was I was terrified of losing my edge.
Yeah.
Because I thought my edge was my sharpness.
That's what I said to you, though. Yeah. When I hired you, I said, you can do whatever you like, but do not take away my mojo. Yeah. Whatever you do, because that's me. That is my defining characteristic, and that's what makes me special. Yeah. And that's what has brought me everything in my life, every element of everything that I have created, because I controlled all of it. That was another interesting conversation that we had.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what makes me brilliant. And if you take that away, I've got nothing. I've got nothing. So I was very careful about that. I didn't want you to take that away from me.
Well, it's the irony that so many people come and they want you to help them worry less. And you say, well, what if we could just get rid of it? And they're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to get rid of it. I just want to manage it a little bit better.
Well, no, I didn't see it was worry. I didn't see that was worry. I thought that was a brilliant entrepreneurial mind.
Yeah.
The same feelings that I would now describe as insecurity, I then defined as brilliance. I just didn't understand.
Well, I remember the woman I was working with at the time saying to me, when I said, but that's my edge, she said, well, first off, it's a double edge because it cuts you as much as it cuts anything else. I heard that. And then she said, actually, I think you're wrong. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, I don't think people respond to you because of how sharp you are. I think they're willing to put up with it.
Right.
And I'd never considered that.
Right.
Because those two things always were there at the same time. So they must be cause effect.
Yeah.
And that's that famous, umbrellas don't cause rain, fire engines don't cause fires, but you often see them at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think definitely I've been told that on a number of occasions. No, Nick, that's happening despite you, not because of you.
Yeah.
You can get in there and make your best efforts to mess this one up, but despite all of that, it's still been a success. It's like,
what in the last 9 months, certainly I have noticed the anxiety levels of the planet go up a bit. And so in a way, what you and I are both talking about was a personal journey where we were very anxious people. You could almost describe that. But there are a lot of people who are very anxious and who aren't used to being that anxious. They would never have described themselves as anxious people, but they're experiencing a lot of anxiety. What have you found in your work around that? Do they just avoid you or what?
No, I don't see that in my world. Because it's inside out, right? Like, so you get your own world where you see people who are where there's increasing levels of anxiety in the world, and where there are people who are coming into your world with increasing levels of anxiety. I can't tell you how I deal with that because I don't see them. I don't see them in my world.
You run in fairness, you run a sort of a program, you've written a book for people like that. So when people come to you, what do you see?
Well, it's funny because I ran a 6-week program at the end of last year, and so people sign up on the program, and then they watch the videos, and then they come to the Q&A calls. And so I ran the Q&A calls. My coaches on the team normally run the Q&A calls, but I really wanted to do it this time around. I wanted to reconnect with that group of people, and I'd go on and I'd do my kind of conversation start a bit at the beginning of the call about related to this week's videos, what I'm seeing that's new, because I created those videos in CTI 2017. So I've seen quite a bit since then. And then I put the hand up for questions, and people would come onto the call. And in the old days, when I started doing this work, people would come on and they say, yeah, but what about this situation? And I'm really worried about this, and what can I do about that? And people come onto the calls and they say, I just want to tell you about this amazing insight I had. Or I thought it was really interesting when you said that. Can you tell me more about it? But there is no anxiety. There were no anxious people asking questions on my calls. Like, I'm just not seeing them. And that to me is, I had a huge insight. I think I shared with you when we spoke last week, but I had a huge insight about that a couple of years ago, like a really like weird insight.
Yeah.
Where I saw the inside out nature of reality, where I saw that I was driving along in my car and just minding my own business, and suddenly I had a thought that came to mind that said, there are no anxious clients. That's you, that is. That's you reflected back out at you in the world, Nick. And then the next thought was, and you don't have to keep doing that. And I tell you, I have not seen an anxious client since that moment in the car. I literally have, I can't, they're not that, it's like the fear that I had when I took thought I was going to have when I took my daughter to Disneyland, and I kept looking for it and it wasn't there. I can't find them, and people get really angry with me and they come up to me and say, that's not true. I can see they're everywhere. Can't you see them in the Facebook group? And I'm like, I look down the Facebook group and I can't find them. Like, I'm not seeing the same posts you're seeing. My world looks really different as a result of that insight. So
what
I sound nuts.
If somebody is writing, I feel really anxious about the pandemic.
Yeah.
Now, you must read those words. Or do those words delete themselves?
I haven't even seen the words. Like, I have one friend who was very relaxed about the whole coronavirus situation, and now if we have a conversation about it, she gets really angry and upset. Like, I see that.
Yeah.
But people don't come to me and say, I'm really anxious about the pandemic. I mean, I hear people say, obviously everybody's really anxious about the pandemic, but they don't. See, this is the cool thing I think about this work. It's like, when I read How to Be Happy Now, I think it was back in 1983 or something, right?
2008, but yeah.
No, it was the very first super coach book, actually. And in the margins of that book is written, I would really love to help people with anxiety one day. I was really interested in clinical psychology as I trained, and I really wanted to be a counselor. And right back then, I knew I wanted to do some kind of therapy work, fix broken people, right? And that was my first inclination. And then I spent 20 years of studying psychology, and then more psychology, and then NLP, and all the modicums I could, because I was really interested in the area of mental health and fixing people. And so for 20 years, I studied ways, and including my journey through the principles, is like I found ways to help people with anxiety. Because obviously there are people with anxiety, obviously there are anxious people. And then all of a sudden, and I know it sounds nuts, but with that insight, there were just people, there were no anxious people anymore. My job was done with that one insight. It vanished from my world entirely. Anxiety vanished from my world entirely.
So I get that this is in some ways the obvious question, and in some ways an insane question. But given that, why do you have a book and a program and groups and coaches helping people with it?
Well, I wrote the book before I saw that.
True.
I've never read the book, opened the book, anything like that since it got published, which is a bit weird, but there you go. And I run the programs because I love having this conversation with people, and people keep showing up to have the conversation.
Right.
And I can share what my story is. Like, I can share my journey, and then people show up and say, yeah, I want to learn more about this conversation.
Right.
But so, I mean, I do from time, I'm thinking like my clients fill in check-in forms, and I do see them write the words like, oh, I've had chronic anxiety for 20 years. But it's such a, like, it's just a lot like one of the many sentences. It's not, and I see it very rarely. I don't know, Michael, it's really hard to describe, apart from it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, no, I can tell.
And in a way, what I've been talking to my clients about recently is like it's just that no adjective is true. So there are no brilliant holidays, there are no scary pandemics, there are no beautiful flowers, there are no hideous weather, brilliant weather, there's no anxious people. It's just another adjective. So in the same way that you could say this pen is gorgeous or it's ugly, like neither of them are true. It's just a pen.
Yeah.
And then my experience of it. And so in the same way that I don't experience scary motorways, I don't experience scary clients anymore.
Yeah.
but I have people that show up that want to explore this conversation, and so like, brilliant. That's what I love doing.
Yeah,
it lights me up, you know.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, the book is called A Little Peace of Mind, not anxiety.
Yeah, well, that's very much what it started out as, right? Like that was very much the focus. Like I'm going to work with anxious people. I want to help people with anxiety, and I guess people do have anxiety when they come to me. They just don't tell me about it. I don't hear them talk about that bit of it. I just get them showing up on the calls and going, hey, you'll never guess what I saw this week. And there's not an anxious person in front of me. Like they're not. They're lit up. They're excited about their insight.
Yeah.
No anxious person there.
All right. So I want to make sure that we take a little bit of time about, especially post the neurotic creating in the world.
Yeah.
What have you found? So you mentioned CTI, which is Creating the Impossible. So that's
yes.
the program I've run since 2010. It's the, you know, one of the books, and you're you know, every year I enjoy watching what's Nick going to do this year. But
so my nemesis, that program.
But so for you, what are you seeing about what is it that allows you to be what I would call prolifically creative?
Yeah.
Without it being driven anymore by this hamster wheel.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that because I knew we were going to talk about creativity, and I was remembering two things that came to mind. One was, and you wrote about this in the end of one of your books, but you know when we were like sitting around in the Ivy?
Yeah.
And we had an apprentice get together and we had lunch or breakfast or something at the Ivy in London, and you said, in your book, you described it this way, and I hadn't realized it at the time, but it really describes it well. It was like a bunch of, I can't remember, RAF fighters, pilots who are sitting around shooting the breeze in their barracks, waiting for the next instructions to come in. And when the instructions come in, they'll get off and they'll go off and fly wherever they're needed. And that to me is much more of a description of how creativity happens for me now. So before, as I described, as like, I didn't describe it as neurotic. I was just, I am creative. I am imaginative. I get shit done. I am pretty incredible. I am fast thinking. I'm a fast implementer. If you want to get ahead, if you snooze, you lose. To be, it's up to me. All the cliches, right? Like, why are you hanging around listening to the end of the training? Like, why don't you just get on and do it? Right? So, but the way I would describe that is like, it was like creating with a foot, like someone pressing a foot into the small of your back, right? Like a foot in your back the whole time, pushing. And it's so tight and it's so urgent and it's so constricted. And how it feels to me now that it's changed is it's like those pilots, like I feel like the reason I can be so creative now is I feel like I make myself a very easy receptacle to use, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to my daughter the other day about, she was falling out and having arguments with her friends, and I was talking to her about like, well, what would it look like if you became a really low maintenance friend? Right? Like if you were really low maintenance, like, and she kind of had to think about that. And I thought, well, I think that I'm just really easy to be used by the creative force. Yeah. Like when we empty out of all of the crap, there's no static there. So I hear the next instruction. Yeah. I do what I'm told because I have a huge amount of respect for the instruction. When thought comes in, when creative ideas come in, I have no idea why I'm doing that, but I'm pretty good at doing what I'm told these days. Yeah. Whereas before it was me doing the telling, me doing the bossing, me doing the creating, me doing the figuring out, me deciding, me creating the vision, me just doing the steps that it took to get there. And it much more feels like I come to my desk and I sit down and I'm like, well, what are we up to today? Yeah. And to my mind, this other creative force that like, it doesn't have fingers, so it needs mind. Right? It doesn't have a keyboard and a computer to create a blog post, so it needs mine. Yeah. I'm like, okay, at your disposal. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's gone from, I was talking to a friend yesterday and she was saying, do you remember in the days, Nick, we used to create like this? Yeah. And she said, and now I feel like I create like that. And it was
close, open hand.
Yeah, like that, like no tension, if you like. Yeah. And so I think in a summary, why I find it really easy to create is like, I'm totally open for ideas. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing next. And my experience has shown me that anything can land, that I'm not expecting at all. Yeah. And as long as I'm open to it, like really cool, interesting ideas come to mind and things to be created. And I'm not really interested in the self-doubt and, oh God, I'm not very good at this. And, oh, what will they think of me? And da, 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 da. And I love enrollment conversations, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
You're trying to bring other people on board with ideas that you've got. So when I did the floral project, or I've been doing the floral project all last year, like I love sharing with people what I'm up to and saying, come join me.
Yeah.
I love speaking to potential clients about programs and getting so excited about what's possible. It's almost better than the coaching for me. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I love being touched by that feeling of possibility, you know, and then watching it unfold by the use of your fingers and your mouth and your, you know, your body being in this place and not that place. And like I've watched myself like garden and grow flowers, and like it's totally not in my capability, but I've watched myself do that. It's I don't know what it is, Michael. It's the difference between sitting down at the beginning of the day and going, right, what am I going to do today? And sitting down at the end of the day and discovering what got done. And watching with curiosity and go, well, what do you know? That's what got done today.
So one sort of last question, and I like to finish with a version of this question. So I have one superpower, which is that I can ordain other people as emperor or empress of the universe. So I'm gonna use my superpower. You're gonna be empress of the universe. What's your first decree for the well-being of the universe? Well-being.
What? I don't understand the question. No, really stupid.
Whatever you say goes.
Don't give me that power. I don't even know what you mean.
No, but like if you literally could change the world by choice.
Yeah.
I want everyone to do this, or I want these people to stop doing that, or I want. What would you do?
Oh, goodness. I mean, it seems like such a cheesy, obvious answer, but it's the thing that comes to mind. It's just like, like, really? Could ask for anything? Would be like, suddenly everybody wakes up. That would be it.
Wakes up to what from what?
Wake up from being asleep, walking around in just mires of conditioning and thought and problems and form and consumerism and buying and worrying and trying to mold other people and trying to fix ourselves and all that kind of stuff, and wake up to the best way I have to describe it is that feeling when it's like, there is nowhere I'd rather be than right here, right now, and like the sun is shining and I love my kids, and it's just like I have the most, like waking up to the beauty of life.
Yeah.
Like, and then who knows what happens in the world of form. But just imagine, right, if that happened to everybody tomorrow at the same time. Like, and who knows what would happen after that, but I reckon it'd be pretty cool. That's what I wish.
I think I've used my superpower as well. I've granted that power to the right person.
Yeah, thank you.
Find more, littlepieceofmind.co.uk.
Yeah.
The site. We'll put a link to that.
Thank you.
Along with other projects. It's been an absolute treat. Great to see you again. Happy New Year.
Yeah, and you as well. Thank you for having me on, Michael. It's been fun.